Welcome back to another completely useless video, or if you're new, welcome to 12 of the most useless minutes of your life. All-time 11s, combining some of my favourite things, namely cricket and useless discussions. Of all the cricket-related activities one can do, making an all-time 11 is surely the biggest waste of time. For one thing, it's never like we're going to see these teams assembled. Some players are 80, and some aren't even alive anymore. For another thing, rather like American politics, or just about anything in the world at this point, it really divides opinion. Yet here I am, braving this task, ready for all the abuse that's bound to be thrown my way. Of course, if ICC stumble across this channel and decide to pull Viv Richards out of retirement so we can see Jasprit Bumrah bowl to him, it will all have been worth it. This is a new series that I'm going to be starting, making all-time ODI 11s for each of the top cricketing nations. And who better to start with than six-time World Cup winners, Australia. Some ground rules before we start. Firstly, we are adjusting across eras. Obviously, a player who played in the 80s and stepped through a time machine won't be able to play at the top level now. But if said player was born 40 years later and had access to current resources, that's what we'll consider. Secondly, I'm not going to be super strict with batting players in their position, but it is going to be sensible. I need them to have batted in that position at least a few times and generally have the skills to do well there. So no batting rugged number 3s at 7. We're also only going to consider the best team on paper, not going to be taking into account dressing room personalities and such. I'm also going to be basing this off a completely random venue, so maybe you'll play in Chennai or possibly Perth, so a proper balanced team must be made. And one more note, cricketers can't be purely measured on their stats, but I will be using some stats to help with my decision. When I say average or strike rate, I mean an era-adjusted value. So someone who has a strike rate of 60, but batted in the 70s, will have a much higher adjusted strike rate. Rather than just walk you through my team, I'm going to shortlist players based on role and explain my thinking, starting with top order batters. The first one might be a bit controversial, given how few ODI runs he scored, not even 2,500, but Greg Chappell has a fantastic record in the few matches he did play. For these 70s players, if their longevity is lacking, I will also give a little bit of weightage to World Series cricket, in which Greg Chappell was outstanding. Up next, three of Australia's inaugural World Cup winners. David Boon, sent out to play aggressively, yet his strike rate doesn't really reflect that at all. And even less explosive was his opening partner, Geoff Marsh. Our third player is Dean Jones, one of the first true ODI greats and a real pioneer of the game. Next, we move on to what some people consider the greatest team of all time, the great Aussie dynasty of the 90s and 2000s. That team won 3 consecutive World Cups, and if it weren't for Arjuna Ranatunga and Aravinda de Silva in 96, it would have been 4. Mark Waugh, Ricky Ponting, Matthew Hayden and Adam Gilchrist. You know all of them, all great players, I don't think they need to be justified any further. But it's not like Australia's greatness ended in 2007. They've added 2 World Cups since then. We can't miss out the likes of David Warner, Aaron Finch and Steve Smith. We're going to throw one more player in there too. His match tally is similar to Greg Chappell, but in that time he's really made his mark. The hero of the 2023 World Cup and India's nemesis, Travis Head. On to the middle order batters, and I think it's only fitting that we start with Australia's first 2 World Cup winning captains, Alan Border and Steve Waugh. Neither of them were particularly outstanding ODI batters, but they were probably good enough to warrant a mention here. Damien Martyn and Darren Lehmann, on the other hand, are definitely good enough to warrant a mention, as too are the 3 Michaels, Bevan, Hussey and Clark. But the list doesn't end there. Australia might not have produced a great male test all-rounder since Keith Miller, but in ODIs there's a couple. Shane Watson, who can bat either in the top or in the middle order, then Andrew Simons and Glenn Maxwell, 2 dangerous attacking batters who can both bowl decent off-spin. And 4 keepers too, in Rod Marsh, Ian Healy, Brad Haddin and Alex Carey. Now, when it comes to spinners, Australia don't have a huge amount of options. Obviously there is the great Shane Warne, but after Brad Hogg and Adam Zampa, there's nobody really left as a frontline spinner. However, when it comes to pace, there are a lot more names. ODI's original terror duo, Dennis Lillee and Jeff Thompson. Then came along Craig McDermott, Glenn McGrath, Jason Gillespie, Nathan Bracken, and Brett Lee. Mitchell Johnson came shortly after, and of course, the current trio, Stark, Hazelwood, and Cummins. That's 40 players we have to consider, and only 11 slots we've got, so filtering down will not be an easy task. When making a team, naturally, there's only one place to start. The bowlers. When it comes to Australia, the bowlers are by far the easiest picks. In ODI, at the very minimum, you need one frontline spinner and 3 frontline pacers. The spinner picks himself, Shane Keith Warne. I can't imagine too many people will have a problem with that. Next easy pick is Glenn McGrath. A lot of people rate him as the best fast bowler ever. I wouldn't go that far, I actually think there's another Aussie better than him. But in ODI cricket, McGrath takes top spot for Australia, so is a definite pick for this team. Unrelenting, metronomic accuracy, and steep bounce, no batsman will find him easy to put away. That man who I alluded to earlier as Australia's overall best fast bowler is Dennis Lillee. He doesn't have the same longevity in ODI cricket, but his record is hard to argue with, especially if you consider his World Series cricket record. Extremely quick, not quite as quick as his partner Tomo, but Lillee had the control. He used to terrorise batters for fun in the 70s. The legendary Viv Richards himself said Lillee is the toughest bowler he's ever faced. Now, a lot of people might have some more debates on the third pick, but for me, this one is easy too. Mitchell Stark. Due to his recent downfall, it's easy to forget just how good Mitchell Stark was from 2014 to 2019. When people talk about the greatest strike bowlers in ODI cricket, his name belongs up there with Waqar Younis and Alan Donald. That gives us a left-arm strike bowler, an out-and-out speedster, a slower defensive genius, and a spin wizard. That is quite some attack. We can't beat around the bush for too long though. We need some batters. And we might as well start with the openers. I think there's 5 names to consider here. Actually, scratch that. 4 names because Adam Gilchrist is an absolute shoo-in. Super destructive, and as a bonus, he keeps. There is no way he misses out. But who's his opening partner going to be? Hayden? Mark Waugh? Warner? Shane Watson? Honestly, I don't think there's a lot in this. I think all batters are quite similar, both in terms of quality and style. Waugh and Watson both give a left-hand right-hand combination, plus both are decent bowling options too. Honestly, given that all of them are pretty much equal, I'm going to be a coward and skip past this. I'll come back to the other opener later. On to number 3, there's 2 super obvious candidates, and I don't think that anyone else needs another mention. Ricky Ponting and Dean Jones. Other than Sir Vivian Richards, Dean Jones was probably the best pre-90s ODI batter, and revolutionised how ODIs were played. Definitely a man ahead of his time. We all know just how good Ricky Ponting was. Not to mention he had a substantially longer career and was a real big game player. Both had a real never say die attitude, and similar to the opener, I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I'm going to go with Ponting, but for now, I think there's nothing wrong with putting Dean Jones in at 4. While he was predominantly a 3, he batted at 4 or 5 from time to time. His game style also really suits the middle overs. He was probably the first true master at running between the wickets and was a wonderful strike rotator. We have lots of strong middle order options, but I don't think that any are better than Dean Jones. Now comes the tricky part. 5, 6, and 7. Assuming we don't open with Watson, how do we choose between him, Maxwell, Andrew Simons, Michael Bevan, and Mike Hussey? Bevan's strike rate of 74 might look quite poor, and even if we adjust for era, it's decent but not spectacular. But his ability to absorb pressure and finish games is second to none. He is the textbook definition of you have to watch him to understand how good he was. Maxwell is a true wildcard pick. He could give you 150 in the last 10 overs, or possibly get a duck, but his part-time off-spin will be helpful. Same for Simons. Also a good bowler, but his batting was more consistent than Maxwell's, while still being a very quick scorer. Hussey and Bevan fill very similar roles. Both were outstanding finishers who could handle more pressure than a submarine. Hussey was the more attacking player, better at finding the boundaries, but Bevan knew how to pace a chase masterfully, very similar to prime MS Dhoni. Both have played some incredibly clutch knocks. But given that we have Stark at 8 and Warne at 9, both capable with the bat, but certainly not all-rounders, I think one of the Michaels has to make the team to take the game deep and bat with the tail if necessary. I also really want Watson. I think his batting is underrated if anything, and having a fourth seam option is super useful in ODIs. Amongst the rest, I think Simons is the best. So if I could only pick 3, I'm going with Watson, Simons, and Bevan just squeaks in over Hussey for me. This means that both Maxwell and Hussey sadly miss out. But, as I mentioned earlier, Watson can still open. And this does give us a left-hand-right-hand combination. So, while there are many routes to go down, I think Watson opening is the way to go and throw Maxwell in at 7. Going Watson ahead of the other openers means we miss out on a negligible amount of batting, if any, whereas Maxwell is so much better at 7 than anybody else. So, 2 destructive openers with a left-right combo. Ponting and Dino can fully control the middle overs. If you need to accelerate, bring Maxwell and Simons in ahead of Dino, or send Bevan in at 5 if you need to stabilise. Stark at 8 and Warne at 9 isn't a bad tail either. Also, so many different bowling options. A leggy, 2 offies, a little bit of left-arm wrist spin with Bevan, 3 right-arm seamers, and a left-arm seamer. Great team. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, or if you didn't, hopefully you at least managed to kill a few minutes and think about cricket for a bit. Feel free to leave any thoughts of your own 11s in the comments, and you can subscribe if you never want to miss a useless video. Bye all!